So I have Pastor Danny Baur here with me, and we're just going to talk a few minutes about Don't Do Church Alone and his experience with us. And he's been with us for a year now,
Yeah,
and we've just had a great time with him and his staff. And so I'm going to ask him a few questions. Hopefully, it'll help the pastors that are looking to have Don't Do Church Alone on. And I really want to give them some experience, Pastor Danny, on, just you asking you. I'm going to ask you some questions and then you can expound on it because I think you also had questions whenever you before you hired us um, in what you were looking for in a church coach. So
yes.
what we do is Don't Do Church Alone is we go in and we help churches grow. We want to, God has called us to help small churches grow to a place of where they want to be. And so, Pastor Danny, uh, basically, the first question I want to ask is what were you looking for whenever you brought us on?
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, I think the important thing is to know just a little bit of back story, just a little bit. So we're a church that's been going for about 28 years since we were initially established. And I guess um, I didn't know exactly what we needed. And I think that's really important that sometimes you don't know what you need until you see what you don't have. And so we know the church is solid. It's been solid. It's good, but it's pretty much been the same base that we've had for many years. You have your little comings and goings, but for the most part, that's so that part's been stable. But it's like, okay, we want to take it into more growth. We have a vision for more. And how do we get there? How do we do that more? And so I knew that we were missing some ingredients, but didn't know exactly what those ingredients might be and what it looked like. And so that's something that Don't Do Church Alone has really, I think, one of the main things has really helped us to get our manuals, protocols, and all that in place so that we know, so that we do have a protocol for everything that we do. Because as you well know, in churches, one thing is sometimes people, if things are not very plain and clear laid out, people get offended, people get upset. Well, this person got this person didn't get that, and I feel like I'm. But if it's a straight across the board, everybody knows exactly what to do. Then that stops much of that. And so, Don't Do Church Alone has really put many of those procedures, protocols, and everything in place through the systems that we now have and operate. Everybody knows what's expected of them, the training, the motivation, is continually there, is continually before everyone, and so yeah, I think uh, not knowing exactly what we needed, but we know we needed something as we began to um, dig in a little bit through Don't Do Church Alone. We know now what we were lacking, and have been able to get many of those things in place. And wow, what a difference it's made! So
Yeah, and so we put operational procedures in place and
yes,
also provided we have a book called The Shift Church Administration Resource Manual that we provided you, the church, in not only a digital format, but also in a print format, which we're going to give to you at the end of our whole process. But we also did an organizational chart. And so I want to ask you about that. Did that help you in putting your people in place and identifying their job descriptions?
I would say definitely yes. Not only did it, but it's a continual thing that, continually helps us to know, okay, basically a flow chart to know who's over what, who, who's responsible for their areas, who's under their downline. Yeah, I mean, the clarity of that I think is vital. It's very important, and it not only helped us to get those things laid out, which is huge, but now in a day-to-day operation of things, we know if there's any question at any time, whose department is that, who are they under, who are they reporting to, who's their servant leader, and then continually to keep that updated and established, from your servant leaders to your team leaders to your team itself, and right on down. And yeah, I think that's really huge. It really is. Another thing is really, really huge that has helped us so much, I think, in the midst of this. And everybody knows about personalities, people's personalities and everything. But when you make that a major thing, with every person that you're interacting with, then not only how to address that person, how to work with that person, but also you know ahead of time how they're going to respond, what's going to what's going to help them, what's going to help you in your communication, how you need to portray yourself to them, the message that you want them to have and to comprehend. So that's been very huge, and that's something that you taught us through Don't Do Church Alone. And I think right away it's our first go-to with any person that we're meeting with, and any of us on our pastoral team now, we know what to look for. First thing we do is we identify, okay, what type of personality is this person? And then two, knowing and understanding your personality, and then knowing how that person's going to respond to your personality. Maybe someone else on your team is better to interact with someone else than maybe even you are, and so that's really important to. I think it was an important um, truth for us to get on board with, and still is every day. So yes.
Okay. And then I want to talk about you've been all these years, you've been bivocational. And
Mm-hmm.
will you talk a few minutes about how that you are now moving into will you just talk a little bit about that
Sure.
and your move
Yeah.
into full-time pastorate?
Yeah, so I've been a electrical contractor for 46 plus years, and that's been a very good job. But and then the last 10 years has been just part time, so that I could work more here at the church. But it's when you're doing that, it's really good. But you're not able to focus on everything that needs to be focused on at the ministry of the church. So at least in my case, it's been that way. Yeah, so we've kind of moved a little more into getting the business marketed and sold, and things are progressing good in that direction. It's already has loosened me up in several areas, and it's good to always have that vision to know where you're going, made plain ahead of time.
Yeah.
And so there's just things that you have to do to make room. It's like, okay, what are you called to do? What's your, and I would say this, that anybody that might be listening to this is bivocational. I even had people come to me and say, hey, Pastor, we're believing God, and this has been several years back, that you're not going to have to work anymore. But one thing that being bivocational in my type of work I did, it's been a blessing because it's enabled me to get to know so many people, and especially as a contractor with some of the leaders in our city, are those that sit on our city board, and to be able to get things done. And I know it's kind of been a setup for which uh, ultimately we're going to be building another facility. And when you're doing that, you need to have good relations with your city officials and inspectors and all that. And this has enabled me to do that. But that time's coming to a close as far as that part of it. I think we've established that very well. And so now, I guess the important thing is if you are bivocational, is always, that's great for the time. And there's been, but in many ways, ultimately, you have to be committed to something. If your loyalty lies in several different areas, then your focus is never going to be strictly, where it needs to be. And so it's definitely, it might not be something that you can do just instantly, but you work towards that and don't let your foot off the gas in that area. Keep it going and until you get to the place that that where your heart's at and what you've been called to do, and which has kind of been the case of where I'm at right now. So it's good.
And we've just recently moved into talking to the church about Win Your Mile and the mission of the church. And so talk a little bit about what Don't Do Church Alone has brought to teaching the whole staff about outreach. And wow, I just think it's been so rich on how to fill up the church.
Right. Well, I'll say this: if you're strictly planning on building the church by waiting for those to come into the church, you'll never successfully really build the church.
Right.
And you look all through Scripture and you see Jesus commanded with the Great Commission to go. Go is the word. I think about and none of us want to say that we're not going if we're just doing the business of the church in the church, but in a sense we're really not going. We're going within the church but not going outside the church. And you think about the little metaphor that's kind of like, okay, what's the three letters of Satan is sat, not doing anything, of God is go, first two letters. So it's kind of like, okay, that's kind of it's in the details. And so going out into the highways and byways and out where they're at, and that's what we began to do more, and it's good to see our pastoral team all on board with that. And now we're getting that message more and more to our leaders, which interprets to getting them to the people themselves, to get that mindset of, okay, we are going to go after people and let them know that God loves them, has a good plan for their life, and ultimately then they will move towards the church. But at first you've got to go out, and so it's good to see people getting that mindset and the importance of winning the lost, the importance of ministering to people. I think so many Christians have the mindset of, I'm truly not ministering outside the church if I'm not going out and leading somebody to Jesus. Well, ultimately leading them to Jesus, yes, we know that that's the ultimate goal, to do that. But to get there, there's a lot of seed planting that sometimes it needs to take place.
Yeah.
Sometimes that seed planting might look like just letting them know that you're willing to be there for them, that you're willing to care enough that you show up, and just to tell them, hey, let me just pray with you about something. Let me, let me, what can I pray about for you? What can I do? And then it's amazing how that one by one, they begin to see that and they gravitate towards that, and then they start showing up in your churches. And so yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's
Pastor Marcus Whitman is one of our coaches at Don't Do Church Alone, and so he's come alongside of us and teaches about invite days, and how to have successful invite days. And so has taught you guys how
Yeah.
to have successful invite days. And so you're doing your first invite day this, I think it's
Christmas Eve. Yeah.
it's Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
I think that that's going to be a real successful time for you.
Well, I mean, I think it's really important when you do those invite days that it's something that resonates with people. There's no sense in making it harder than it needs to be. And
Right.
if people are already in the mindset of, hey, it's Christmas Eve service, this is Christmas, I know I should have something in my repertoire about Christ. Well, let's give them a little something. Let's encourage them, a little nudge to say, hey, why don't you come and, an hour service at the most? Come in. We're just going to have, Christmas themed, and and then use those things. Christmas, Easter, things like that, where people are even thinking about maybe a little bit, or there's information out there about nudging people already about the importance of they need to go to church, and then too, especially if they have children, focus things around children so that because people want to, if there's something their child wants to do or involves in helping and lifting their children up, they'll get involved in it too. So, little things like that, which, I've been involved in invite days and invite Sundays and services like that, and we've been very successful at it. But I think what helped us a little bit too is getting all of our staff on board, and that's something that Don't Do Church Alone, I think, has helped a little bit, that we are able to meet with all of our pastoral team, all of our leadership, to get them behind us together. So it's not like you're trying to push or pull this wagon by yourself. Now you've got everybody else with a hand on helping, and it runs a lot smoother and a lot easier. So,
I really saw that in all of your staff and how even your son and
yeah,
associate pastor Michael, he just really just even said a lot even last week on
absolutely.
how excited he was. And when you get it into your staff, it can really make a big difference. We had Tim Carpenter even on talking about Saturday Sunday schools for children's ministry and going out and into the city and talking about Saturday Sunday school. So there's a lot of ways to have invite days. And I loved it that how Pastor Marcus just gives us a lot of ideas and just empowers. Man, the guy
Yeah,
is
yeah,
just like empowering on going out and winning the lost and
yep.
bringing them in and building your church. And that's what it's all about. So,
And
uh,
that passion, I believe, Dr. Margot, is so important. That passion, and Pastor Marcus has that, and that's catching. People catch that.
yeah,
It's easier to catch the vision
yeah.
from somebody that's casting a vision with passion than it is just a dialogue or monologue, could be mainly. But yeah, it's so I think that's important. Is he adds a lot. He brings a lot to the table in that.
Well, if there's anything that if there's a pastor out there that is considering don't do church alone, and would there be one thing that you would say to them that might help in them and why they would need us, why they would benefit in having us? What would be that benefit for them?
Absolutely. I think I would say this: no matter the size of your church, it isn't about size, it's about procedure, protocol. It's kind of like, when you go to do something, sometimes it's like there's a science behind it. And regardless of how you slice it, it's going to work by when you enact certain things. And so that takes in, whether you're a church of 50 or whether you're a church of 100 or 300 or 1,000 or 5,000. These and it's interesting that because I've talked to pastors that even recently a little bit that is a church of several hundreds and maybe even close to 1,000 people, but yet don't have a lot of the things in place that we've put in. And I'm thinking, man, if you had this information that even just that I have gained and you plugged that into where you're at right now, you would double overnight. I'm telling you. I mean, it would, things would begin to work and it takes a lot of pressure off. So I would say that regardless of the size of your church, these are principles, these are procedures that everyone can glean from. And if you once you have that clear and your staff, those on board with you, whether it be your pastoral team, whether it be your staff leadership, whether and then when you get into your servant leaders and whatnot, when everybody has procedures and protocols in place, they have their manuals, they know what's expected of them. Everybody shows up and does their job, and not only that, there's a joy to it. Sure takes a lot of work off of you as a pastor and as a leader, because you're not going to have to be dealing with issues so much because you've laid it out ahead of time. This is how things are done, and then also if there's any question, you just point them back to those manuals. Man, that makes it so much easier. So I think everybody, regardless of the church size, what where you're headed, what you're doing, where you're at right now, um, these are things that every pastor needs, because really, in a sense, and I know a lot of pastors they might argue about this fact, but it really is true. Every church does operate as a business because, in a sense, it is in a business. You have a product, you have an organization, you have people that's involved, in that organization, employees, you have, and when I mean, you wouldn't think about having a business without having procedures and protocols and things in place. And if you do, that business, it'll run around like a chicken with his head cut off, trying to figure out which way's up and what I'm supposed to do. And the employees don't know. But when there's a clear path forward, everybody's so much happier. The fruits are there from it, and so I would just encourage every pastor, get on board. I don't care where you're at, just make the decision, do it, jump in there, and you will not regret it. I'm telling you. And it's afterwards you look back and say, "Man, now I have some tools in my tool belt to work with. I know what we can do to get the job done." And it's so good. Everyone needs it for sure. So,
It has been such a joy to work with your team. I'm telling you, thank
oh,
you.
it's been great.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You
God
bet.
bless you.
Love you, Dr. Margot. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless.